On this episode of the DCeric Show, we go back to the year 2000 with Test Drive Le Mans for the Sega Dreamcast. Well, I really can't remember when I got this game, and I don't really remember the very first time I played this game. But I do remember starting to play this game last summer using my VGA cable, which really showed how good looking this game was. Even though the game is from the year 2000 and it does have dated graphics, it's comparable to the racing games of today, and still looks good nonetheless. And the controls and feel make this game the best racer I have ever played. Test Drive Le Mans was first released for the PlayStation and Windows PC in March of the year 2000 by Technics. Shortly after, it got released for the Game Boy Color on June 2nd of that same year. Shortly after the Game Boy Color version on November 13th, it got released for the Dreamcast. The game would finally get released for the PlayStation 2 on June 15th of the year 2001. Of course, the game is different depending on what platform you plan on playing the game. The PC and PlayStation versions are identical to each other, but the PC version does look slightly better. The original PlayStation version only has 6 tracks to race on, and I'm not sure how many cars were in the game, but I'm sure there was enough to use. The PS2 version had 70 cars you could race, and in the PC version, there was 50 cars. The PC and PS2 versions of the game have 12 tracks to race on. The PlayStation 2 version had the most content over all the versions, but still didn't look half as good as the Dreamcast version due to lots of jaggy lines and no anti-aliasing. However, it was still identical in gameplay and looked better than the PC and PlayStation version. The PlayStation 2 version was created by Infogrames. Of course, there was a handheld version released for the Game Boy Color by Velez and DeBale. The game included power-ups like oil slicks, invincibility, and engine upgrades. There is 10 tracks to race on and 10 cars to use. The Dreamcast version has 40 cars and 10 tracks, but was most known for being the best version because of its high-quality graphics, and the gameplay was really fun. There's one system it didn't get released on, and that was the Nintendo 64. This could possibly be because the system wasn't generally popular for racing games. If you go and look at the list of racing games for both Nintendo 64 and PlayStation 1, that could probably tell you why the game didn't get released for the Nintendo 64. The Dreamcast version was released by the now defunct Infogrames Melbourne house, which was bought out by Chrome Studios. Chrome Studios would rename Infogrames Melbourne House to Chrome Melbourne House as a subsidiary in Melbourne, Australia. In 2010, the studio would close, but Chrome Studios still operates and creates games for a variety of systems. The Dreamcast version was proudly remembered as one of the greatest racing games at the time of release. This would be the first time you would see a racing game look as realistic as the actual sport on any console of that time. The racetracks look almost identical as the locations they are based on, like Suzuka, Bugatti, and many more. Graphically, it was one of the first racing games. If you drove your car off the track, the tire marks would be left imprinted into the dirt. The only thing left out of the game was the in-car dashboard view. The weathering isn't too bad either. The skies look really nice whether it's raining or it's sunny out. One thing that would have been cool is being able to have the option to race at nighttime, not just being able to use it in Le Mans races. There is something else missing in this game, and it's winter weather. What is funny is there's a winter challenge event under Championship, but it's just races full of rainy weather. Also, the Dreamcast could do anti-aliasing, so textures were nice and smooth. The cars in the game, however, were a little too colorful and shiny and didn't really look as realistic to me. The reason why the PS2 version didn't look as good is because the system was well known for being able to process more polygons, rather than using graphic filtering like anti-aliasing, which is the reason there was a lot more jagged lines in the game and textures weren't as smooth. The sound in the game was actually pretty good. There's 2 different types of music you can select from, either rock or techno beat type of music that is quite calming. The cars in the game also sounded pretty amazing and as realistic as the real thing. The controls were simple and easy to use and were all around pretty smooth, which made this game feel a lot easier to play than other racing games. There's 4 different modes in the game, including Quick Race, where you can race 3, 5, 7, 10, 15, or 25 laps on one of 10 tracks to unlock other tracks and cars for use in other modes, like Time Trial and Multiplayer. There's a Championship mode where you can race on a select amount of tracks for each event, and there is 16 cars to unlock in this mode. There's a Le Mans mode where you can select a 10-minute, 30-minute, 1-hour, 6-hour, or 24-hour race. You will unlock vehicles in 1-hour, 6-hour, and 24-hour races. Time Trial mode is where you have to beat the goal time for selected tracks, and you can unlock more cars. There's also a Multiplayer mode where you can race up to 3 of your friends, which will make an even more amazing experience, though there is no online multiplayer, which would have been good for a game of that time. Also, if you didn't know already, you'll be using the save feature quite a bit in this game. I bet you actually thought to yourself that you had to race a full 24 hours. Well, the VMU allows you to save every time you go to the pit. However, this doesn't work in career mode when you're in the middle of an event. As said, the game contains about 40 vehicles in the game, and all from licenses like BMW, Jaguar, and many more. The game contains 3 difficulties: Amateur, Intermediate, and Expert. Amateur is for the beginners, which will auto-brake around corners, and there is driving assist. Intermediate is the difficulty I generally use, which turns off auto-brake but driving assist remains on, and feels so accurate and smooth. The Expert mode, well, there is no auto-braking and driving assist is turned off, and the computer opponents become even more difficult. Generally, the computer opponents can be a bit difficult as well. Sometimes they like to get stuck to the end of your car to make you swerve off the track. In races that contain more laps, it's recommended to use a pit stop to fuel your car and repair any damage. You'll have to learn the right times to do it so you can keep a steady pace and hold on to your position. For a lot of the races in the game, you'll have to find the right car to race and set it up accordingly to win races in the game. It also helps to qualify for a race where you compete against other racers' track time. Depending on how good you did, you'll start in a higher position for the race. If you don't qualify, you'll start at the lowest position. Now, this was such an amazing game, it's really too bad Sony didn't take the save option and use it in the Le Mans races for Gran Turismo 5. I believe the reason why they didn't was because of the trophy achievement, as it is one of the hardest to get and lets you feel like staying awake for 24 hours. Or you could pause the game to take breaks, but this would mean leaving the PlayStation on for more than a few days. I guess I've come to the end of the show. I really enjoyed Test Drive Le Mans. It really gave an amazing arcade and simulation experience. The graphics in the game were really amazing, although the cars didn't look all that great and there was no dashboard view. The sound in the game was pretty amazing, the cars sounded realistic, and the music choices were a nice touch to this game. The save feature for the Le Mans races was good to have, so you didn't have to keep your Dreamcast on for days, even weeks, to finish the 24-hour race. The 2 to 4 player offline multiplayer mode sounded like fun. You don't really get that in most arcade simulation games. But one of the best features was missing, and that was being able to play online, which would have added even more excitement to this game. This game had so many unlockables that it kept you into the game, and the realism was at its best for Test Drive Le Mans. This is one of those games that gives the Dreamcast system a good name. The graphics were superior to most games of that time, and was also more realistic. I played the game with a VGA cable, and it looks even better, and I recommend you get the VGA cable to experience it the way I did. I'd use the regular AV cables for this video, and obviously the quality is not as expected as it would with a VGA cable. If you would like to get your hands on Test Drive Le Mans for Dreamcast and other platforms that were mentioned, you can find it on eBay or your local game shop. Also, if you would like to get your hands on a VGA cable or adapter for Dreamcast, you can find them on eBay or, again, your local game shop. Oh, and hey, just before I leave here, I'd like to share with you guys an awesome website. www.Dreamcast.es. It's a Dreamcast homebrew website. They offer homebrew software for the Dreamcast, like game ports, homebrew games, and much more. They've been a lot of help to me in my videos, and I think they deserve a bit of spotlight. So if you got a Dreamcast, visit their website and use a translator on the right side of the page and start enjoying homebrew software. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the DCeric Show and come back to see another game I couldn't keep my hands off of.